member for Monbulk, and also the Deputy Premier and the Minister for Education. I will mention as well the other members who hopefully may come along, so you know them when they arrive.
Danielle's here.
Okay, so Danielle Green, who's our member for Yan. She's also the Parliamentary Secretary for Sport and the Parliamentary Secretary for Regional Victoria. And we're hoping that Vicki Ward will join, our member for Eltham, and she's also the Parliamentary Secretary for Transport. So thank you very much for all of you taking the time to be here with us today. I'm certainly not going to try to introduce everybody else in the meeting, but just to say that we have some very key tourist business leaders that are from our region attending with us today. So thank you all for being here.
Excuse me, Simon. Vicki Ward's just said, it's Danielle Green here. Sorry, there's another name on my iPad. I can't change it. It's an IT problem. Vicki Ward's just sent me a message saying she's having difficulty getting in. So maybe if someone can help her out with that.
Okay, I'll try and send her the details again.
Thank you, Simon.
Okay, I was just saying the idea for today's session came out of 3 roundtable discussions that Simon and the team at Yarra Ranges Tourism ran recently with our local industry partners. And one of the common items that came out of the sessions was a real desire by industry to be able to talk directly with and to hear directly from the government leaders about the issues that we're all facing and the various responses being taken. 2020, without doubt, has been a horrible year, particularly for those of us involved in tourism and in this region. And we know that it's similarly been an incredibly busy and stressful year for everybody in government. And so we're extremely grateful for you for taking this time to be with us today. And we think that this is a really valuable session and important session. We're called a regional tourism destination, but as everybody here knows, we're considered part of metropolitan Melbourne for the purposes of geography, which means that we're still firmly closed like the rest of Melbourne and not yet opening up like other parts of regional Victoria. So most of our local tourism businesses are struggling hard to survive. And sadly, some of our iconic businesses have already been forced to close permanently. We've got very limited time today, so I'll stop talking in a second and we'll ask everybody to be as efficient as possible when asking or answering questions so we can get through as many as we can. The session will be recorded, and can I ask that everybody raise your hand when you're in Zoom to if you're asking or answering questions so that we can find you on the screen. Simon will be moderating the questions, and we would encourage everyone to use the chat area to lodge any comments or questions that we can't get to today so that we can send them through to the Minister and the MPs at the conclusion of today's session. So now I would like to invite the Minister and his colleagues for any opening remarks before we open up the floor for questions and comments. Thank you, Minister and members.
Thank you, James. Look, I will start by just making some introductory remarks. I want to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd like to acknowledge my my dear friend, the Deputy Premier James Merlino, the member for Monbulk, Danielle Green, the Parliamentary Secretary for both sport and regions, Vicki Ward, the member for Eltham, if Vicki has joined us. And I'll start by saying something that, of course, you all know, that our visitor economy has been enormously impacted by both bushfires and COVID-19 throughout 2020. We are absolutely committed to supporting the sector as it navigates what is an incredibly challenging time. Some of the initiatives that have already been launched, I know a number of businesses in the Yarra Valley would have taken advantage of Click for Vic. It's connected Victorians, thousands of Victorians, myself included, with local producers and creators and businesses right across the state. We've had close to 3 million Victorians who've been reached by that campaign so far. There's been almost 400,000 generated website leads. That's actual clicks to operator websites via the page since its launch. There's almost 1,000 businesses on the web page and all of its partner sites, the Victorian Country Market, Providore, Colab Pantry. So I think it doesn't replace actual visitation, of course, but it's been an incredibly successful campaign for what it is. We know that industry feedback's been overwhelmingly positive. Some businesses have been inundated with orders. There are some indeed hiring new staff, and and it's had a very positive impact on those that have benefited from it. The Regional Tourism Accommodation Support Program, which was a $40 million program to accommodation businesses across the state, and of course the Economic Survival Package, which has been worth now I think north of $2 billion, with a massive business support package which has gone through 3 tranches now. But I think the most important thing for business now is clarity and certainty about reopening and how that will work. And we want to work with the sector to make sure that that's delivered appropriately. My department's been engaging with local industry. We're very keen for that discussion to continue. And you would have heard from the Premier's comments over the last few days that given the sort of very steady reduction in infections across metropolitan Melbourne, we are looking and hoping that that reopening will happen a little sooner than it was otherwise intended to occur. And I say that completely understanding the frustration of Yarra Valley businesses, which I'm sure would have dearly liked to have been included in regional Victoria for the purposes. The contributions through Simon, who has represented Yarra Ranges Tourism on the VTIC Destinations Group on Initiatives for Recovery, has been very important. I also want to acknowledge that Yarra Valley and Dandenong Ranges tourism business owners that took part in the Regional Tourism Review roundtables last year contributed some great ideas via Engage Victoria and fed into Mary Ann Thomas's review. And I'm sure I'll get some questions about that, which I'll be happy to deal with. As well as the Tourism Crisis Response and Recovery Subcommittee of the Yarra Ranges Tourism Board and Yarra Ranges Tourism, because they've also submitted detailed recovery action plans to Visit Victoria. And I know that they've been well worked into the proposals that are going both to Cabinet and to the Budget Review Group, of which the Deputy Premier, who is with us today, is a member. So that engagement has informed the development of the Recovery and Reform Plan. That is all about building longer term sustainability. It's not just about getting through the balance of 2020. And as I say, that Regional Tourism Review also fed into that piece of work. We are really positive about the likelihood of opening sooner than October 26. We see that 5-day average continue to come down. I think today it was at 16.4. And to put that in some context, I think 15 days ago it was north of 70. So it is coming down pretty quickly. That last little bit will be quite difficult because averages don't fall as quickly when you're dealing with smaller numbers, but we are very positive about the progress that's been made. We do need to make sure that all the steps that we take continue to be steady and sustainable and in line with what the health experts tell us is the best way to avoid a third wave. And I think everyone would agree that the single most important thing is to ensure we don't go through this again. So I know this has been an incredibly difficult time for business generally. It's been particularly difficult for the tourism sector. I would say to you, and I'll deal with this in questions, that our ambitions for the tourism sector from a support point of view are pretty extensive. We're determined to reopen. We're determined to have not just a viable but a thriving tourism sector. We want to welcome visitors from across the state and then interstate and then ultimately internationally. That last step is probably a way off, but I think the other two are eminently achievable in the not too distant future. So I'm happy to take questions and hear from you about what you think are the best ways for us to do that together. I thank you for your time, and in order to avoid not leaving time for questions, and I should say, Simon, that we will, and James, we will deal with any questions we don't get to today subsequently, but we'll deal with as many as we can in the next 20 minutes or so. So thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Unless any of the other members wish to mention anything quickly, we're happy to go straight to questions. Yep. Ralph, Yarra Gables.
Thanks. Minister, my issue is the government just doesn't seem to understand how much money businesses are losing and therefore isn't doing enough to support us. I run a small accommodation business in Healesville. Since lockdown in March, we've been kept afloat by the federal government's JobKeeper program and by the banks deferring our mortgage payments. Now, on Monday, we all know that JobKeeper payments started reducing. Late yesterday, I got a call from my bank asking me to start mortgage repayments and couldn't understand that I was in metropolitan Melbourne and still in lockdown, and wanted me to spend more than half of my month's income making a mortgage repayment. Needless to say, discussions are ongoing. I've applied for the next round of the Business Support Fund, and if I'm lucky to get that, I'll get $10,000. I'm looking forward to that because the week after, I expect a bill for the state government's land tax, which will be $12,000. So I will go back by $2,000. Minister, we need ongoing regular support from the state government. Without that, many of us simply won't be here for the rebuild next year. So my question is, what are you and the state government going to do to support us through the next few months to keep us alive?
Thanks, Ralph. Well, look, I know this is difficult for any business to hear, but of course, state government support is also limited by our capacity to provide that support. Already we have spent, I think it's north of $2 billion in business support, and we simply don't have the capacity to replace all of the lost revenue that businesses suffered as a consequence of a global pandemic. We have, though, now had 3 rounds of business support. There's also been, I think, and I'm not the treasurer, so I can't speak absolutely knowledgeably about every element of tax deferral and waivers, but I know payroll tax for 2021 has been deferred till the end of June 2021. And we will, as the budget working group considers all of the different bids that come in, we will be aiming for a substantial jobs and investment package to support business, to support the reopening of the economy, but to get customers back to you as quickly as we possibly can by driving down the infection rate. So I'm sorry that the support that has been provided so far, substantial as we think it's been from an overall point of view, because there are literally thousands and thousands of businesses that we have had to support. I'm sorry that you consider it insufficient, but we are doing that which we can afford to do, given the huge number of businesses that are in need of government support. And we will continue, as I think we've demonstrated so far, to roll out support packages, subject to our capacity to do so, subject to the changing restriction levels. And my department, moreover, is always available to speak to individual businesses about their concerns about things such as tax and business support. So if there's any other ways we can assist, we'll certainly seek to do that.
Thanks, Minister. We've now got a question from Ian and Leanne Neeland from the Yarra Valley Chocolatier and Ice Creamery.
Thanks for the opportunity. As a brief overview, Ian and I purchased 40 acres of land in the beautiful Yarra Valley in 2012, and we built our first chocolatier. So it's a tourism venue where all products are made on site, and it has a cafe, retail, and lots of workshop and tasting experiences surrounded by beautiful orchards and landscape grounds.
I know it well.
Good. Over the last 8 years, we've also built 2 more chocolatiers, one near Torquay on the Great Ocean Road and one in Flinders in Mornington. 2 of our chocolatiers are still in lockdown. We have welcomed 1.5 million visitors per year at the 3 chocolatiers, and we employ 220 staff. COVID has made a major impact, and visitation has ceased and our income has reduced by 95%. Without the development of our online sales, anything possible, I've put in a box. I've made it as a do-it-yourself kit, and we've sent it out to Victorians to bring some chocolate love into their homes. So JobKeeper has helped us employ our staff for these lower margin sales online. But sadly, on the flip side, on Sunday night, we now lost JobKeeper because of our online sales. So we're completely on our own, and we had to lay another 50 staff off on Sunday night, which was heartbreaking when they worked so hard beside us over the last 6 months. So banks have been supported, deferring all our commitments. But of course, you know, we've lost all of our equity that we've worked so hard over the last 9 years building up. We're, because of our size, eligible for most of the state government support, and how we are even going to contemplate paying our $100,000 payroll tax that's just sitting there deferred is completely beyond us. So ineligible, sorry, yes, okay. We wish to explore how the state government can help our industry continue on and to recover. Our question is, can the government work directly with segments of the tourism industry to create site and business specific protocols? We need a sensible approach to enable large hospitality, wineries and wedding venues with appropriate outdoor spaces to apply sensible density capacities, as has occurred in other states. The 1 person per 4 square metre rule with caps of 10 people indoor and 50 outdoor does not create a viable opening environment for our sector. It's a huge issue for regional venues such as ourselves, wineries and venues. Thanks, Minister.
Thanks. And look, you're raising issues that I could say, without going into detail, have been the subject of enormous conversations around the table. The density limits that have been imposed are a consequence of health advice in regards to the increased risk of transmission indoors. Having said that, you know, we are looking at ways that we can, you know, as we see, for instance, in regional Victoria, they've had a 20-person indoor limit now for a couple of weeks. There are very, very low case numbers in regional Victoria, and that does create the opportunity for us to start looking at ways that those numbers can be increased. We are working with industries, industry by industry, on COVID-safe plans, whether that's about cleaning protocols, temperature testing, marshals, all sorts of things to ensure that they can reopen in the safest way possible. And the only commitment I can give to you is that, you know, those of us in the jobs department, in the industry support department, are working to get those numbers to the highest level that we possibly can, so that businesses can not just open but operate profitably. And we are, you know, and just rest assured, you're not Robinson Crusoe. I mean, I would suggest to you, every pub in regional Victoria that's currently operating at 20 indoors would like to be at a higher level. Every restaurant would like to be at a higher level, and they're making those representations very, very clearly. And we are taking them on board, and we are in constant conversation with DHHS about whether or not, you know, when it will be safe, when it will be appropriate for those for those numbers to be increased. We're not looking to leave them there permanently. We are looking to open in a safe and steady way, and we will work with you, individual industries, on those sorts of COVID-safe plans in order to allow you to trade profitably. That's the objective.
Leaving them there for 1 week is crippling. You know, a 300-seat cafe with 10 people sitting inside them isn't worth opening, Minister.
There's so much effort that goes into the administration of the protocols. I would suggest our venues are far, far safer than going to see your friends down the street. The effort we put into, you know, to take people's names, to sanitize, to do, you know, the additional staff we've got on board, and you know, to administer the protocols, very, very safe environment, I would suggest. And our outdoor, we're now sitting at our Anglesey venue. Our outdoors here, we can have 50 people. You know, we could sit 150 outside, but as long as you can control the weather, sir. I don't know how you do that, but yes.
That is beyond me.
Yes, yeah. But that's the situation, yeah. Thank you.
I do understand.
Thanks, Ian and Leanne. We'll just now go to Kiff Saunders from Global Ballooning. Kiff's put a presentation that he put together, Minister, in the chat, so we'll send that through as well at the end of that, and please download that. The rest of the region, it's a good summary of what his business is facing.
Thank you, Minister, for attending, or ministers, and also my fellow colleagues. I mean, certainly as with every pain point that we're seeing in this situation. I certainly understand the government's priority has been to control this situation, and we are collateral damage in this. But I would say that probably most people sitting at this table are the people who have significantly invested in growth, and they're the type of people who do have extenuating circumstances in relation to the amount of debt that they carry to support the kind of growth of the economy in this state, through employment, through visitation, through all of those aspects. And I certainly think that there needs to be a differentiating point within government to recognise companies that have, that are large employers that have invested a lot of money, because the concept of deferral is only just putting off the inevitable in a situation like this. And I'd certainly ask you to look at the idea of drilling down. I mean, from a tour and transport perspective, I do want to speak for our industry. I mean, we are probably one of the hardest hit in the fact that we have no pivoting opportunities. I mean, tour and transport has effectively been closed down. It started in January with the fires. I mean, certainly for a business like ours, 60% of our business was decimated by the international Chinese travel ban in January, and subsequently from there it's been downhill. I would ask the Minister to seriously consider the ability for tour and transport operators to return to business with suitable COVID-19 plans. We did have this as things were looking like they were going to fire up. We spent 2 months developing a plan that we submitted that would allow us to operate. I mean, now this distinction that no enclosed spaces applies to vehicles. We can't even put 10 people in a 24-seater bus. This is just, this looks like we will be the last out, even as there is this promise of return to some form of business on the 19th of October. I can't even see the time that this is going to allow us to be able to operate effectively, and certainly I'd ask you to immediately address that. I have put together this PowerPoint presentation, which hopefully I would ask you, Minister, just from a business point of view. I mean, certainly this medium-sized business pain is real. I mean, it is a question of whether we will get through this. I mean, for all of the marketing campaigns that you're offering to support business return, this isn't going to deal with the fact that it costs me at this stage approximately $22,000 a month to remain dormant, and that my whole team has been detached with no ability to be able to do anything. And certainly that's all recognised in this document. My last point is that, like, in this ability to be able to provide support, I realise the state government does have finite resources. I would really like to make a plea to the Premier to take to the National Cabinet for businesses that are, all the businesses that are sitting at this table have been viable, profitable businesses that have paid considerable taxes, and that the ability to be able to gain support from money that we have invested in taxes over previous years should be able to taken back. So rather than carrying a loss forward, why can we not achieve economic assistance to the capacity that our size business needs based on the money that we have paid in taxes in the past? This would be highly auditable, would stop rorting, and would certainly give the necessary assistance based on the size of the business, as Leanne and Ian have just said. Give us the support that we actually do need to remain dormant to protect this state and the health of the community.
Thanks, Kiff. Certainly, I can tell you that the Treasurer is in pretty constant dialogue with the Federal Treasurer and the Premier likewise with the PM. I think it's probably fair to say that without the efforts of some of the state premiers, I'm not sure we would have ever had JobKeeper coming out of the Commonwealth in the first place. There was some pretty heavy lobbying that went on from states in regards to that, and I'm sure that will continue. We will, we will take on board those comments in regards to getting your business up and running in a viable way. I think you appreciate that my department doesn't get to make these calls alone. There is as you can imagine, there's a constant back and forth between the jobs department and the health department about trying to find an outcome which both supports business but avoids the likelihood of the virus taking off again. And that's why, even at 16 a day, the advice is that we would be at great risk of another significant outbreak if we opened too early. So, we do have to do it in a sort of steady, sustainable way. And I understand the pain that causes for business. But I think, and I know it's difficult to hear about the medium term or the long run when you're in financial distress now. But that is the approach that we feel based on the health advice that we simply need to take. But we will, I can assure you that we will do as much as we can safely, and we will do our very, very best to get you an operating environment that allows you to run at a profit. That is our objective and our endeavour, and we're working on it every single day.
I just wanted to say that this my point in this is that it is recognising businesses that aren't operating at 5, 10, 15 or 30%. It's 100% completely dormant. Yeah. And remaining so, that is really important, because JobKeeper in this capacity only wraps the fruit on the tree while the tree is dying, and the ability to be able to recognise 100% dormant in your forecasting is really important for tour and transport operators.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kiff. Thanks, Minister. We'll go to Leanne de Bortoli from Bortoli Wines. Thanks, Leanne.
Thanks, Simon. Basically, I am reiterating what Leanne is saying and Kiff is saying, and I think where you have these measurements that have been put on, and I noticed that Matt James has also put a comment in about the capacity caps, that we need to really, for us to be able to come back in a viable way, we need to look at that density space, not actual caps, because the reality is with a lot of the wineries and restaurants out here in the valley, we're in middle of a vineyard, big open spaces. We have got the space. We also have the complexity of having cellar doors, and some of the cellar doors are connected to the restaurants, and coming back to be able to have people being able to come into cellar doors to be able to taste in a safe manner following the COVID safe plan, but to be able to have cellar doors operating. I feel in the past that cellar doors have been lumped in with bars, and I think we are quite separate setups. And we've seen from the first lockdown that the companies coming back with COVID safe plans, sanitising. I think we've demonstrated that we can look after the safety of visitors, and if that means having extra people so that you've got a person on the door to keep an eye on numbers, you have people constantly sanitising the premises. I mean, we are doing our darndest. And as Leanne was saying, if you've got a large venue and you can only have 10 people, what is the point of opening?
Yeah, just on that last point, Leanne, I'm assuming the actual limit, it's the indoor limit's actually 20 in regional Victoria at the moment, but it's dependent on whether you've got separate spaces.
Yes.
I hear, can I just say, I hear everybody loud and clear that people would like that limit to be either increased or indeed just based on square meterage.
Yes.
Please, everyone, be aware that message is received, and we are, as I indicated before, in regards to regional Victoria, we're already sort of contemplating whether there can be some movement there. And we would hope that if we are able to do that, and we're able to do it sooner, then there's the opportunity potentially for that to also apply to those of you who are in the metropolitan Melbourne bubble. But I can't make any commitments at this stage. It is based on the sort of ongoing dialogue between DJPR, other departments and DHHS and the Chief Health Officer, and we will do as much as we can safely. But I do understand the concern.
Thanks, Leanne. Thanks, Minister. Minister, are you able to stay a little bit longer, or are you?
Yep. A couple more, Simon. That's fine.
Excellent. We'll go to Phil Johnson.
Thanks, Simon. Minister, I look outside my place here in the Yarra Valley. Amazing view, amazing mountain range, Warburton, Yarra Junction, Hillsville. I can see it from my place. When is the government going to give support, game-changing visitor infrastructure as part of their recovery? We miss out on all infrastructure funding for regional Victoria due to our metro classification. Yet parts of our region are further away from CBD than Geelong, Macedon Ranges. The region has identified several strong points. The region has identified several strong projects worthy of the support that can lead positive job outcomes, such as the Australian Garden recreation up in Olinda, the Yarra Ranges Trail, Northern Loop, and the raptor enclosure and other experiences at Hillsville Sanctuary. When can we expect a positive announcement on these, please?
Phil, a couple of points. The building works package that's all, some of which has already been announced is not limited to regional Victoria. The thing that I would say to you is that there is a without going into the detail, the work we've done with VTIC makes very clear their ambition, and my ambition as Tourism Minister is that one significant part of tourism recovery ought to be infrastructure investment, both supporting the private sector and public investment in infrastructure, and that is part of the sort of case that my department and I am making into the budget process. Now, the budget process is always extremely competitive, but I think it's fair to say that there's a recognition that this sector's been very severely impacted by COVID-19. We are hoping that the expectation is that the budget will be a date hasn't been set, but the expectation is that it will be sometime in November, and I would be again, without pre-announcing or predetermining what might be in the budget, we'd be hoping for some strong infrastructure support as a result of that process. But you just have to wait for the budget, Phil. When you ask about when, you got to wait for the budget.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. We'll go to Jeffry Farman, please.
Minister, a growing concern for business in our region is the difficulty of gaining building and business insurance in areas subject to the government's bushfire management overlay. My wife and I own and operate Country Place in the Dandenongs, which we've built up over 30 years. Country Place is a 62-bedroom corporate hotel and conference centre. This property is possibly the most historic site in the Dandenongs. The first settler, Isaac Jeeves, came here in the 1850s with his family and established his businesses at Kallarama and built one of the early hotels on our property. Our business employs 27 staff, many who have been with us for more than 20 years. Over that time, the Country Place has won 5 Victorian Tourism Awards. Now we face the double threat of COVID followed by the bushfire season. Last year, we could only get 55% insurance cover, which put everything we've built at great risk. And I'm sure you can imagine that it's very difficult to sleep at night under those circumstances. Recent notice received from the insurer just a week ago advised a reduction from 55% to 50% cover next year, plus a new $500,000 bushfire excess. We're now looking down the barrel of 30 years of hard work going up in smoke. I believe this is very close to market failure for the tourism industry in the Dandenong Ranges and possibly the Yarra Valley, brought about by the state government tightening its bushfire overlay. My question, Minister, is, given the dreadful insurance situation many of us face due to the government's policy, would it urgently consider a suitable collective scheme to support tourism businesses unable to get appropriate insurance, as it did with the Bushfire Services Levy?
Jeffrey, I'm going to have to take that one on notice. The insurance industry is obviously, it's not regulated by the state. But I know that there's been lots of discussions with the insurance sector over the course of COVID-19. And what I've heard is that they've been somewhat reasonable in terms of their dealings with business over that period of time. Having said that, the particular overlay between insurability and bushfires is outside my sort of current knowledge, and I'm not sure about the viability of a collective scheme, but I'm happy to take it away and come back to you with some advice.
Very good, thank you.
I can't answer that off the top of my head, and I don't think I should try.
Thanks, Jeffrey. That's a real concern for us, obviously, Minister, around issues of market failure in the industry. So we appreciate that. How are you going for time?
Yep, another couple.
Another one. If we can go to Andrew Swan, please, from Yarra Valley Cycle.
You're on mute, mate.
Had to be one, Andrew. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Had to be me. Okay, so our biggest visitor infrastructure program for the region is the Warburton mountain bike destination. It's fully funded to the tune of $11.3 million and has met with significant impediments following years of work and joint committee works from the council, the community and the state government. The state's planning law have now invoked an EES, an environmental effects statement, that will cost well in excess of $1 million and probably around 12 to 18 months of work. This is after close to 12 years of work to date by local government. It's decimated the business community's confidence for the region. Businesses like ours, we've invested close to $2 million in Warburton on the basis that the project was going to be started earlier this year. That is, building of the project would be started earlier this year. Can the government ensure that its department supports the delivery in areas of the project that are not sensitive to the EES? There are parts of the project that can be commenced that are not significantly affected by the EES process. There's trail building that can be done, and there is also work within the infrastructure construction, such as car parks, bridges, and local trail to the town, all of which is being held up under the one guise of the EES. The project itself will deliver, when completed, around 188 full-time jobs. It will deliver millions, $23 million per annum in income to the region, as well as bring visitation rates to the region of around 165,000 visitations to the local region. So holding the project up based on this EES it's inexcusable.
Thanks, Andrew. I think James and I may have paid a visit to the trail earlier this year and met with council about it. So I know the project. It's a great project. What you say at first blush seems reasonable, but I would need to have a conversation or get my department to speak to DELP about whether or not it's possible under the Act. I'm just not sure of the answer about whether it's possible under the Act that once an EES is commenced, other parts of the project can proceed. Certainly, it would seem to me that if that was possible, it would be sensible. But we'll need to follow that up and find out from DELP whether or not that's something that they'd be prepared to agree to. So, James, I don't know whether you want to add anything. As the local member, you probably got some local intelligence on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Martin. Thanks, Andrew. As Marty said, we'll follow up the direct question you've raised, Andrew. But in terms of the project itself, this is a terribly exciting project for the whole of the region. and and as you say, has received federal, state and local government investment. There's been some real deep engagement, Andrew, between council and Richard Wynne as Minister for Planning and the department about how we can absolutely expedite this process, get it done as quickly as possible. So let's take on notice a specific question, but I just wanted to assure you and Simon and James and the rest of the team that this is identified as a very significant project. And I go to Bright every summer with the family, and the investment that cyclists bring, whether it's road bikes, mountain biking, the investment that they bring to local communities and regions is quite significant in terms of the per capita spending. So this is an important project.
Thanks,
Okay.
James.
Thanks, ministers.
And I guess we're just asking for a sympathetic, practical opportunity to deliver something for business right now. It just seems a logical solution right now. So, Minister, how are you going time-wise?
One more.
Katrina, Yarra Valley State.
Hey everybody. I know that Steve O'Brien has asked the question in the chats, but in relation to investing in tourism for the region, will the government consider a sponsored travel voucher scheme initiative similar to what has happened in other states? And secondly, in relation to corporate business and bringing much needed midweek business to the region, which is significant for jobs, is there going to be any incentives like a voucher system for the corporate sector, for business events, corporate meetings, things like that?
The simple answer is yes, we're considering those things. You might recall that after the bushfires, we actually undertook unfortunately, COVID kind of intervened, but we had a very extensive program set up whereby businesses were pledging to take their conferences, their board meetings, their training days out to the regions, and it had got started, and lots of businesses, lots of big companies. I think we had 750 or so companies signed up to that kind of hero program where they were taking their business events and conferences out to regional Victoria, and then COVID hit, and then they all stopped doing that. So we are looking at, and I know the programs of which you speak, those vouchers whereby people are provided with encouragement to holiday in regional Victoria and get some government support to do so. It's not something I'm in a position to commit to, but it is something that I can indicate that we are actively considering.
Thanks, Minister. We've got Cam Mackenzie wants to know whether you'll sneak one more in.
Yeah, righto, Cam.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you, ministers. Look, it's more a comment, and I think thanks to everyone today for sharing questions and things, because there's only so many body blows I think businesses can take. But coming into this, I thought I might zoom out a little bit and look at tourism in general. I think we learnt a huge amount after Black Saturday out here about, what businesses can sustain, and we're in to have to rebuild tourism now. So whilst I think we're going to have to see significant funding for tourism bodies and associations and special interest groups, I'd really like government to look at this from another angle as well and say, yes, we need to fund those things, but we also need to be mindful that businesses know what businesses want, and there's no point in funding those things if the businesses aren't in a position to buy into those initiatives. And that's exactly what happened after Black Saturday. We had a well-funded tourism board, but a lot of those initiatives that came out of it were buy-in. The businesses just didn't have the money because they'd lost their tourism, or if you were a winery, you'd lost tourism and grapes. So I guess my comment or my request is to look at it from two angles. Yep, we need to rebuild regional tourism, but we also need to make sure that businesses are in a position to buy into those initiatives or take advantage of those initiatives. It's going to be a hell of a ride going forward. I think everyone on this call is up for that challenge, but those body blows are just taking their toll. And I think we need some confidence that government not only is looking at tourism campaigns and rebuilding tourism, but making sure businesses are in a position to take advantage of it. So that was really my comment.
Thanks, Cam. And look, what I'd say is, you know, I don't have any interest in, making enormous government investments in things that aren't going to make a practical difference for you. So where, you know, in terms of framing and crafting the support that we provide, whether it's through Visit Vic, Justin Burney from the departments here, Andrea from my offices here, where you know, it's never possible to contemplate every individual kind of nuance and request on those things, but to the greatest extent we can, we want to craft these things in a way that's going to make a real difference to you, rather than just, you know, activity for the sake of activity. That's not in anyone's interest. So we will try and make it as sympathetic to the kind of actual needs of business as we can, and do the things that will actually drive people to your towns and to your individual establishments in a way that allows you to, you know, trade back to profitability. So, and we're always open to those good, you know, we don't have a monopoly on good ideas, Cam. So if you've got things that you want to feed into that process, you know where we are.
Terrific. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Simon, I'm going to have to scarper at that point.
Thanks, Minister. You've been very generous. I know you didn't afford us anywhere near that time in your diary. So thanks. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Danielle Green has just contacted me offline and suggested that she's more than happy to stay online if there's some further questions as well. So thank you. And I'm not sure where Mr. Merlino is at with that, or Vicki Ward, but
yeah, Simon, I've got a meeting in a few minutes, so I'm going to have to jump off as well. But can I thank Marty as on behalf of Vicki, Danielle, and myself. But most importantly, thank you all. And I just wanted to reiterate one thing that Marty said. These forums are absolutely critical and go directly to the conversations that we're having at the Crisis Council of Cabinet, other forums within government, the thinking of Marty's department, health, and elsewhere. So I just wanted to reiterate that reassurance that Marty gave. But thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks,
Simon. Thanks to all of you. And my most, apart from budget and apart from industry support and the decisions of the Crisis Council, the thing I look forward to most is visiting as many of you as I can. And I already have, I've been to a lot of your establishments, but I can't wait to be back, and hopefully I'll see a lot of you over the next few months as we're allowed to start moving around the state again. So I reckon most of the wineries here should expect a visit.
If we survive, Minister, we're not sure if we're going to survive. Every day is life-threatening to our businesses, so we need your urgent attention, please.
Yep, no worries. Yeah, I understand that.
Wrap up. Thank you, ministers and MPs. And I think it's hugely
I have to go too, sorry, but I just wanted to thank everyone for your time. Like Martin, I mean, I live in Eltham, so I'm in your front yards and your backyards regularly. We often head through Yarra Glen and find our way to a number of your establishments and your businesses. You are important to us, not just from an economic point of view and what you give to your own communities, but we also have personal attachments to the businesses that you have. They're businesses that we know and that we do care about. So thank you very much for letting us know how we can try and do things better. And we will try and do that. And as Martin said, looking forward to seeing you as soon as I can get past Warrandyte.
Thanks, guys.
For attending. That's been a very good session. Thanks.
So Simon, I'm not saying that, I think that's Danielle here. I'm not saying that people have to stay on the call, but as Martin's parliamentary secretary in the sport area, but also with responsibility for regional Victoria and a Diamond Creek and Neeland resident and local MP, I'm happy to continue if people have other questions, and that I can certainly pass back to Martin.
Thanks, Danielle. So I'm not sure how everyone's going. We actually got through an enormous amount, probably more than what we anticipated. I know some of you have contacted me directly offline, which we will follow up with some communication through to the Minister's office. Yep. But the floor is probably our business leaders right now. So open slather. If you have a couple of comments or questions you'd like to throw on the table, where we'll take them on board, as well as letting Danielle take that feedback back for us.
And I'll just make some sum up remarks at the end. Thanks, Simon.
Right.
Simon?
Yeah, Tracy.
Danielle, sorry, I'm going to ask the obvious question. I work at the Eastern Golf Club and Yering Gorge Cottages, and golf obviously has become a big hot topic during the last 6 months. It's not just exercise, it's also mental well-being of members and those who play. So I just want to put that out on the table, that obviously we're wanting to see how quickly we can get golf back, playing within very strict criteria and everything like that. So I would be, my boss would sort of not be happy if I didn't raise that question.
Well, Tracy, you would not get a bigger golf tragic of any political leader than our Premier.
Yes,
so you can rest assured that your boss, you can reassure your boss that the Premier is fully engaged in this. And my understanding, really, just the hesitation with the Chief Health Officer, it's really any organised sport. It's not so much the pursuit itself, it's the facilities, shared bathrooms, things like that. But I think, within a few weeks of, the continued slide in case numbers, we're getting pretty close to being able to do that. And I would think that, and given that people have been able to, they're now able to go fishing within 5 kilometres and things like that. So I think that we're not far from that. So I just think get ready, because we absolutely do recognise the mental wellbeing as well as the economic benefits, and we have a Premier and numerous members of the government who want to do it themselves, and lots of their friends. So, we absolutely get it, but thank you for raising it, and we'll certainly be back in touch when we've got good news.
Great, thank you.
Danielle, I have a question just in relation, which we didn't touch on, which is a fairly big point for probably many businesses sitting at this table. I mean, the significant investment that we have made in the international marketing arena for this region, for that now has basically just, we're not even talking within in the latest realm of recovery. I would be very interested to hear what the government's response to that is, because, I mean, even a business of our size would have invested hundreds and hundreds of thousands in kind of supporting tourism initiatives to drive international visitation to this state. That now, I mean, we've had, $150,000 of unpaid invoices from international travel agents. And no likelihood at the 60% of our business that was derived from the international market returning for a minimum of 12 months is just that, in this kind of support for businesses that have been engaged in the international tourism community, is the government even factoring this in on their radar to encourage business confidence, businesses to re-engage back into that market?
Well, Kiff, I think that even in this morning, with comments by Jacinda Ardern and others, that there is quite a bit of work going on about establishing, a hemisphere type bubble in a sense, and particularly looking at countries that have a similar risk profile to ours, and particularly those in Asia, and in terms of the disease. And you would think, places like Taiwan and Japan would obviously spring to mind, possibly South Korea, and I think even Thailand is not too bad at the moment. But I think I actually think that maybe we're looking at under 12 months from what the rapidity of those conversations, from even just my reading within the media. But also, I just think that for someone who's like me, who's been locked up in metropolitan Melbourne, I think that people are going to burst out of the blocks. I really do. You've got a whole lot of baby boomers who've been saving up their shekels to go overseas, who actually can't do it. And so I think that particularly businesses that are closest to Melbourne, I think that you will see a real, lift in demand, and hopefully you'll get new customers into our Victorian businesses from Melburnians who used to go overseas. So hopefully within the next, 6 to 12 months while we await the return of international visitors, that'll be helpful. And I think that the marketing efforts that we'll turn to that, because we don't usually market to Victoria, to Victorians, and so you will get some people who've never set foot in our businesses. You know, they go out to the airport and they take off somewhere else. So I think that's what we're going to have to be looking at for the moment. But yeah, it's definitely something that we're live to.
I think you're missing the point of the question. The question more is my confidence as a business to re-engage in promoting this state and this region, which is coming out of our cash reserves that now don't exist. I mean, it's not so much that the international market won't return, it's the business confidence to deal with the catastrophic loss of all of the money that we have invested. I mean, you're not going to have the agents that we have had business relationships who have gone insolvent, who are owing my company alone $150,000, you know, coming back. Is the government going to look at the investment that businesses in the past have made in the international market and support those businesses to re-engage, to create new connections within the international arena?
Apologies if I missed that aspect of the. It was a long question, so apologies if I missed that aspect of it. And look, I think that certainly within Minister Pakula's department, because he has responsibility for international trade as well as tourism, and those sort of relationships, and the work that Visit Victoria does, like it's absolutely in our interests to re-establish those sort of things and expand and grow them. You know, we run a variety of programs about, you know, grow your business and things like that. And it's obviously something that we can build in. And I think with the tourism boards, you can play a really good role in, and as the Minister respond to Mackenzie's questions, we don't want to spend money on stuff that isn't going to help. We do want to spend money and invest our people capital, you know, our public servants, in doing stuff that you need, not what you don't need. So I think that that's a really important point to make, and I'll certainly convey that. And I've got my advisor on the line as well, so she's taking notes, and I believe that Charlotte from Minister Pakula's office is online too.
I mean, for me, the very important thing is this retrospective understanding, which is what I was saying in the sense of being able to claim taxes back from the federal government. This was our commitment and what the scope of our viability was in the past, and to be able to gain support based on, you know, not everyone crying with their hands out, give me money, give me money. This is recognising the people who have invested in this state, and as I say, most people sitting at the table here have invested significant amounts in promoting this state, and therefore, like memberships to the Yarra Rangers. I mean, these $2,500 memberships to VTEC, to, you know, to bodies, to attending ATEC, to all of the overseas travel that we have committed to, that really, I mean, a lot of that is not going to recover, because it will be a case of rebuilding relationships with new people. And it is actually understanding the businesses that have been supportive in regional, you know, like in the greater aspect, and how do you drill down into those people to offer, you know, support to be able to be a part of what traditionally was how the international and interstate tourism marketing of this state occurred. And certainly I would love to think that it isn't just open to everyone. There is recognition for people who have invested in this market previously, and there is a delineating point there.
Yep, I'll certainly make sure that that's conveyed.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
How you going, Danielle? Are you still okay for?
Yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine, but I'm also recognising that if other people have to go, but I'm happy to take any more questions and also just give feedback.
Going once, going twice, third. Is that it? That's put the gavel down.
Okay,
put the gavel down for a second.
Thank you.
Danielle, Just to emphasise on the mountain bike project at Warburton and the Yarra Trail, that's a secondary project that's also very important to visitation numbers. These types of projects bring visitation that are looking to do more than just mountain biking. So when they turn up here, they'll do mountain biking for days and days, but generally they turn up with family as well as friends, and they're looking to do other activities. So as far as the other businesses that have been involved in this meeting today, I'm not trying to be just selfish about the mountain biking. The numbers that this project will bring into the region are huge, and those numbers will be looking to do other activities. And the thing is, we don't have to spend a cent because it's all pledged. The money's sitting there waiting to be spent. We've got a trail company that's been appointed, people sitting around twiddling their thumbs, waiting for an EES, which now it looks like the budget for the EES is going to come out of the trail building budget. I mean, it's just inexcusable.
Yeah. Well, I haven't heard that side of it, but I think that you actually had, obviously, both ministers that were on the call today in Pakula and Merlino are incredibly invested in this. And I might just, responding, I might just sum up as well. Vicki Ward's had to leave too, but I'm Parliamentary Secretary for Sport. Vicki's Parliamentary Secretary for Transport. We are both passionate about cycling and the economic potential. So we're doing quite a bit of work together. We're both Neeland MPs, but I think the possibilities of cycling and connecting Neeland into Yarra Ranges and beyond is really enormous. And I think it's great that transport and tourism always worked hand in hand, but I would really encourage the board and the operators to engage with your local transport companies. And this is coming back to Kiff's point about not being able to get people on a minibus. No, and with the restrictions and the numbers at the moment to venues, I think no one understands timetabling and things like that better than bus companies. And so I've certainly been saying this to Panorama, and which is Neeland's biggest Panorama Coaches is Neeland's biggest employer, and I've been certainly saying that to them around the tourism sector. Dyson's are an enormous company, and they've actually, I would encourage you to engage with them, because they've actually developed a prototype bus for the carrying of cycles, and I think that this could be really the opportunity to break open the nut in Victoria of having an enormous cycle tourism sector. And going back to my mention of the cashed up baby boomers who have got nowhere to go, and I just think that they will be an enormous sector for Victorian tourism and cycling. And I think that we've really got, and we've invested in the Diamond Creek Trail. That's actually under construction at the moment. So that'll be a great cross promotion, I think, between Warburton and the Diamond Creek Trail, the Yarra Trail. And I think you've got champions in government that particularly want to see more of this in Vicki and I. And I think we've got the Premier's attention around it too.
Okay, just to reiterate, Danielle, that the problem, it gets to Richard Wynn's office, and that's where it's hitting a brick wall. Okay.
I know about EESs. I've got one happening on one of my road projects at the moment, and but we engage with Richard very strongly, and I was successful in one of my EESs in one of my local projects to be able to break off some of the parts of it, so that we could continue with part of it. So I'm sure that James and Mr. Pakula will certainly be pushing hard for that. But yeah, look, I just reiterate that we've got so many people on board in government, and particularly Vicki and I, and as parliamentary secretaries, just that next rung down of assistant ministers. But given we're both Yarra Valley MPs as well, we really want to be part of promoting and growing this agenda. And I think just to get off the cycling thing, what I started to say about the buses, I think particularly, I talked about bus companies in relation to cycling, but I also think particularly for all the venues across the Yarra Valley, I think if we're able to engage more with our local transport providers and having them moving people around our various venues and engaging them in the time management of that stuff. I think actually giving them a role in that, and that might deal with some of the venue caps and just having groups of customers coming through. And I just think that they would be really central. And Simon, I'm happy to work with you and others on engaging with those companies, and Vicki as well, given she's Parliamentary Secretary for Transport. And we could start having some of those conversations. And even if it's just around, you know, I know, for example, you know, like your Budburst Festival, or, you know, Neeland does open cellars, we could actually run some trials of how we can do this in moving people around, but also promoting, you know, there's a lot of school buses that are dormant during the day, to actually engage with Dyson's and with Panorama, maybe to use some of those coaches during the week and during the day to get them to your venues, as well as looking at having some, you know, really, you know, let's look really big picture about how we can move people around, and especially if we're wanting people to have a drink, and moving them from, you know, the Hurstbridge line and the Lilydale lines, and even across to the Seymour line. You know, there's really no reason why we can't use our public transport network better, so we can get people to the fabulous Yarra Valley businesses and introduce them to people for the first time. And I think, you know, when I look at my electorate and the growth communities and the growth people from, you know, South Asia that have moved to my area, you know, in the Whittlesea area, I think they know very little about the Yarra Valley. So I think for the board to actually think about, you know, a bit of small investment in some advertising through some of those local South Asian and Chinese speaking outlets, that could be a way, and particularly talking about during the week visitation, that could be somewhere where you can just get new markets, and given their connection to overseas students and all of that, when you have the return of the overseas market, they might actually help being additional ambassadors and spokespeople for the fabulous Yarra Valley. And so to reiterate what my colleague said, I can't wait to get back to all of you, whether it's gin in Healesville, you know, chocolate in Yarra Glen, you know, cycling up in Warburton, you know, like I just can't wait to do it. I really can't. And I know that there's 72 of my colleagues on the Labor side, and I'm sure all the crossbenchers and every party, every MP is in the Parliament is waiting to do that. And unlike a lot of other Victorians, we haven't lost our jobs. We recognise that we've still got incomes, and we have a responsibility to spend that taxpayer dollars on local visitation.
Yeah, can I just quickly, really quickly ask you not to forget our recovery. We're very confident that we're going to have too many people that we won't be allowed in the doors. That's not the problem. We're not worried about when you know, people are allowed to move, that they're not going to come out to the valley. They're going to come out in their droves, and then we're not going to let them in the door, and then they're going to, you know, like the typical thing, you know, last time with restrictions. But you can't forget about our recovery. We are millions and millions of dollars worth in debt. We've got millions of dollars worth of deferred interest, deferred BAS, deferred payroll tax. So we're not worried about, you know, a few people coming in and spending $50 at the chocolate. We're worried about the millions that we have to recover that government is going to forget. So please don't forget about our recovery. And it's not just forward. We have to look back. We can't just forget what's happened in the last 6 months.
No, we won't. And I mean, look, every human being is wearing it, you know, dealing with this pandemic. But I'm saying that we as government are wearing it, and individuals, we really understand it. And I suppose that was I do absolutely understand that you will have too many people at the door, and you have that all the time at the chocolate. But I suppose the strength of Yarra Valley tourism is that is your cooperation and your collaboration. And I think by working with our local transport companies, we might be able to spread some of that load. But also, you know, there's so many, on your point on recovery, I'm a veteran of Black Saturday, you know, as a firefighter, and as a community leader since 2002. And James Merlino was in the Parliament then too, as was the Premier. And we still recognise that there is an impact for Black Saturday. And we constantly push that, and I constantly get a hearing. And so I'm absolutely, and we also recognise the impacts of last summer's fires. So I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is that you have many people in government who recognise that a disaster or an economic hit is not just for 5 minutes, it goes on for a very long time. So
Danielle.
I just wanted to reassure you that you're amongst kindred spirits.
Thank you.
Thanks, Danielle. James,
Thanks.
do you want to say some closing remarks?
Oh, thanks, Danielle, for that, for staying on. I think for the people that are left, it's been, I think the session was, you know, enormously helpful for everybody to be able to know that their comments and feedback are going directly back to the minister and back to government, and that they got that opportunity and to see their reaction, whether that's going to be able to move the needle. I mean, we're not the only ones making comments, and I'm sure that many of the comments have been heard before, so they'll do what they can. But I think it's important that this sort of session that allows us to talk directly with MPs and ministers and to know that the feedback is being heard. And so I think it was a very good session. Well done for setting it up, Simon. That's great. Can I suggest we just wrap it up here now? We've gone